Welcome, everyone, to Truth and Freedom Podcast, where awakening begins with asking the question most people are afraid to ask. I'm your host, Dr. Dan Amzallag, and this is not just another podcast. This is a journey into awareness, courage, and truth. Now, today, I wanted to talk about something that many of us misunderstand. It is called boundaries. Now, we often think of boundaries as walls, as barriers that push people away. But in reality, boundaries are not about distance, they're about clarity. They don't say, stay out. They say, here's how you can stay in my life and still respect who I am. Now, boundaries are not punishments, they're acts of love for yourself and respect for the people around you. Now, when you don't have boundaries, you live in constant emotional exhaustion. You say yes when your body screams no. You stay quiet when something hurts you. And you give more than you have to give just to keep the peace. And then resentment creeps in quietly, slowly, until you no longer recognize the version of yourself that's always overextending, always accommodating, and always pleasing others. That's what happens when love lacks structure. Because here's the truth: love without boundaries becomes sacrifice, and selflessness without balance becomes self erasure. Now, boundaries are not rejections, they are protection. They protect you from peace, your time, your energy, and your sense of self. They say, I matter too. And yet, so many of us carry guilt for setting them. We fear being called selfish, difficult, or cold. But the irony is, boundaries are what allow you to love more authentically, because you can't truly give from a place of depletion. Think about it. When you overextend yourself, is that really love? Or is it fear? Fear of losing someone, fear of being disliked, fear of not being enough unless you're giving everything. Now, real love doesn't demand that you disappear to prove your worth. It honors your individuality, your voice, your needs. And in relationships, whether romantic, familial, or professional, boundaries create safety. They tell people how to love you correctly. They tell them where the line between you and them exists and how to cross it respectfully. Because without boundaries, there's no respect, only assumptions. And assumptions breeds misunderstanding, frustration, and pain. Setting a boundary is not an act of aggression. It's an act of self-awareness. It says to everyone, I know what I need to stay healthy, and I'm brave enough to express it. Yes, some people will resist your boundaries, especially if they benefit from your lack of them. Well, that's okay. Their discomfort doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're changing the dynamic, and that takes time. Now, you're not responsible for how others react to your truth. You're responsible for staying true to it. Here's what happens when you start setting boundaries. At first, you feel guilt. Then, you feel at peace. And eventually, you feel power. Because you realize that boundaries don't shrink your relationship. They strengthen them, the one that are real. Now, they filter out those who were there for convenience, not connection. They reveal who truly respect your worth, not just your availability. And that's where freedom lives, in knowing that love doesn't require overextension, only authenticity. So ask yourself, where have I been giving from emptiness? Where have I been silent when something needed to be said? And where have I confused peace with people pleasing? So start small. Say no when you mean no. Pause before agreeing to something that feels wrong. And communicate clearly, even when your voice shakes. Now, you don't need to justify your boundaries, only live by them. Because the people meant for you will understand. And those who don't were never aligned with your truth to begin with. Now, boundaries are not about control, they're about care. They're love with structure. They're how you teach the world who treat you, and how you teach yourself that you're worth protecting. When you finally realize that boundaries are not walls, they're bridges built on respect, and you stop apologizing for having them. Because the moment you set a boundary, you reclaim your power. And that power isn't selfish, it's sacred. So here's your reminder. Saying no is not rejection. Saying no is saying yes to your peace, your values, your well-being, and your truth. Boundaries are love, not just for others, but for yourself. And when you love yourself enough to set them, you finally create space for the kind of love that doesn't ask you to lose yourself to keep it. Now stay tuned for more truth on our next episode.